I am so glad you are here to listen to this conversation I had with Dr. Sophocles. She is amazing. This conversation was amazing. I'm so excited. I'm just feeling amazed all around. She is a doctor that has been practicing gynecology for 29 years and is internationally respected expert in menopause and female sexual health function. She's the founder of Women's Healthcare of Princeton, which is a progressive gynecology practice serving over 30,000 women in the US. To meet the needs of international and remote US patients in 2024, she launched the Thinking Woman, a virtual consultation practice. I just am so wowed by her. She is, let me read a couple more things. She's completed a BA in English with honors and distinction from Duke University, attended medical school at Jefferson Medical College, completed her residency at Johns Hopkins Hospital, Greater Baltimore Medical Center. She's a board certified in OBGYN, a certified menopause practitioner, and has been named a fellow to national societies ISSVD and ISHWISH for her contributions to gynecology. She is a passionate advocate for reproductive freedom and contraceptive access. She fought for 7 years alongside Senator Shirley Turner to achieve passage of the New Jersey Bill S275, which is part of the historic Freedom of Reproductive Choice Act, which became law in 2023. And she is even taking her just incredible brain worldwide, and she is appalled by the pervasiveness of gendered healthcare gap. She's developing a women's clinic in rural Kenya, warriors. She has a TED Talk, What Happens to Sex in Midlife, that I'll link in the show notes. She's working on a documentary. She has 4 kids. Anyhow, I am so excited. I brought her on the show today to just share all of her goodness with you and to help you. Her mission is to separate fact from fear about using hormone replacement therapy in midlife and to help us all transform our health for years to come. You know, this is a dear subject to my heart. I just had I have a hereditary heart issue, and had a big experience this past December, actually this past March, where my heart stopped twice. And one of the medical professionals said that HRT could be attributed to saving my life. So my estrogen patch I'm very fond of, and there's a lot of fiction around what's going on with HRT, and I'm so excited to bring her on the show and for you to listen in. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the show. I am so excited that you're here, Dr. Sophocles. Did I just pronounce that correctly?
You did perfect.
Good, because I have it written here phonetically, but my my background with linguistics is a little shady. So I am so excited to bring you here to the Love Your Life show to talk to my listeners. You have such a vast background that I just covered in the biography and sharing. You know, I mean, even from a major in English to founding a women's healthcare of Princeton to starting a women's health clinic in rural Kenya. I love it all. Can you just, and your TED Talk and your 4 kids, I could just keep ending. Could you just give us a quick, how did you get into this work? How are you here now?
Yeah, I became an OBGYN not unwittingly, but I went to medical school thinking I would be a cardiologist and then realized I didn't really want chronic care. I wanted to see progress. And so being an OBGYN was sort of a 9-month project and I got to see the end of it. And being a surgeon, I enjoyed that too. There was something to fix and take out, and I really loved that. But then as I practiced for several years, I started realizing that I was well trained to deliver babies and do surgery, but I had had very poor training in menopause and no training in sexual health. So I dove really deep into both of those to educate myself in sex therapy and in menopause treatments. And it was also because my patients were getting older and they were asking for help and I was failing them. I was doing a terrible job of understanding the breadth of symptoms that were related to menopause. I knew hot flashes, but women would come in and say, I have frozen shoulder, I have dry eyes, I have burning mouth, my cholesterol went up and I don't eat differently. I have muscle aches. And I thought, what is their problem? What are all these things? And I would send them to a neurologist or an orthopedic surgeon or a psychiatrist. And I was so wrong. I was failing them. So once I learned how much was related to menopause, it helped me be able to say, I got this. And it helped
Mhm.
me, it forced me to learn the bottom line about HRT
Mm.
because I grew up in the 90s and the
Mhm.
early 2000s when the Women's Health Initiative came out and the whole world got scared and everyone stopped ordering HRT for people thinking it was going to do harm.
Mhm.
And I also have lived through the last 20 years where we have done really good
Mm.
studies that were big and strong enough to be able to disprove the WHI.
Mm.
But those myths hold very fast. That misinformation is very hard to shed.
Yes, so I want to get into the myths, and I just quickly want to, I just find it fascinating that, a well-educated doctor and in the women's health field, not cardiology, like there, just the lack of up until,
Yes.
now I know that's starting to change, but the education of something that every single woman will go through. It's not like,
Yeah.
diabetes or whatever that I know physicians are trained in. It's like, no, like every single woman goes through this. And
I know.
um,
I gave a graduation speech for a medical school recently,
mm,
and the speech was on the biggest blind spot in medicine, in medical education. And the biggest blind spot, in my opinion, is not educating all the medical students
mm,
about menopause because 50% of the
right.
population will go through it. 100% of women or
Mm-hmm.
humans with a uterus and ovaries will go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, whether you go into ophthalmology or orthopedics, whether you're male or female, whether you're wealthy, poor, Christian, Jewish, Muslim,
Yeah.
Pakistani, or
Mm-hmm.
Argentinian, you're going to come across a woman who goes through menopause, or you're going to be one.
I love
So,
that idea.
I,
Yeah.
I think it was good. And there was a lot of people that came up to me after the lecture saying, I'm just graduating from medical school and I had one lecture in 4 years on menopause and I don't remember any of it. And I'm
Yeah.
not comfortable with it. What do I do? So if we can disrupt medical
Mm-hmm.
education a little bit, I hope we can make clinicians better trained so they
Yes.
can preemptively say to a woman with palpitations, hey, it might not be
Right.
that you're anxious. It
Yes.
might be that you need HRT. You
Yeah.
know, go
I love
figure,
that
right?
because I know that, many of the listeners, like we have all these different symptoms. And so you'll go in to get those different symptoms addressed. Like I went to the ophthalmologist and I was like, but my eyes are really dry. And this guy, I was so glad he was like 30 and he's like, maybe it's perimenopause. I was like, what? This is so
I
cool.
love you. Thank you.
Exactly. I was like, you're the best. But I
I know.
do love speaking to that. Can we back up a little for listeners who
Yeah.
hear you saying HRT? Can you tell us just a really quick, what is HRT if they are,
Yes.
what the
And
heck
actually
even?
we even call it HT now, but
Mm-hmm.
HRT is the old term that stands for hormone replacement therapy. And it means that when you go through menopause, your ovaries, which make three things, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Yep, you heard me right. Ovaries make testosterone. They cease to make those. And so the three important ovarian steroid hormones that we need for so many things
Mm-hmm.
are virtually wiped out. And so HRT is simply adding back tiny, tiny, tiny doses of two of the three.
Mm-hmm.
Testosterone in America there is no FDA approved testosterone formulation in America. Australia and the UK, there are ways to get it.
Mm-hmm.
America, I think it will come in the
Mm-hmm.
next decade because there's so much pressure to have it. And we're learning more and more benefits to women getting that testosterone replaced, not
Mm-hmm.
in high levels. No one wants to make a woman have a beard or get giant muscles,
Mm-hmm.
just teeny, teeny amounts to help with libido and building muscle mass because we lose muscle mass a lot after 50.
Okay.
But HRT is basically if you have a uterus, it's two things, estrogen and progesterone. If you have no uterus, like you had a hysterectomy,
Mm-hmm.
you don't actually need the progesterone. You only need that as sort of the yin and yang of to the uterus needs both. It's
Mm-hmm.
had both its whole life. And if you just give one, the estrogen, you'll get tissue to grow,
Mm-hmm.
you'll start bleeding, it could be abnormal cells, so not good. So you
Mm-hmm.
must have progesterone if you have a uterus. So that's what HRT is.
So basically just, and we're not trying to get it back to our levels of like a 30-year-old. We're just trying to supplement HRT just is sort of, and I guess HT now would be hormone
Yeah,
therapy, or I've also heard
yeah.
HMT, like hormone management. Like we're just trying to
Yeah,
get that
you're
little
not doing it, you're
boost.
just getting it to levels that you had before you became menopausal.
Hmm.
And actually your levels at 25 and at 45 are pretty similar. It's sort of a
Hmm.
similar range.
Okay, yeah.
But it's just getting it back in that before you were
Hmm.
menopausal range and keeping it there. And you're really doing this for two reasons. There's
Hmm.
really two reasons that you take HT. One is you're having symptoms, you're moody, you're
Hmm.
grouchy, you have anxiety, your hair loss, your hot flashes, your vaginal dryness.
All the above.
There's there's about
Exactly.
34, but we
Yeah.
don't have all that time. So trust me on the 34. Um, the other reason is actually preventative health. It's
Hmm.
because we know that there are estrogen receptors in the bone and in the coronary arteries and in at least six parts of the brain.
Mm.
And we know from really good research that when you go through menopause and these estrogen levels plummet, the first 5 years after the periods stop is the most rapid time of bone loss, of
Mm.
degradation of bone strength and
Mm.
density. And this sets you up for osteoporosis later in life. It's
Mm.
a very preventable disease.
Hmm.
And it's a big cause of injury, death, hospitalization, pain and suffering that we don't need to experience.
Yeah.
Same with coronary artery disease. We know that up until menopause, women have far less heart disease, cleaner arteries,
Hmm.
lower cholesterol than men. But after menopause, sadly, we catch up very
Mm.
quickly. And it's because there are estrogen receptors on the coronary arteries. But once we don't give them any estrogen, the plaques
Mm.
accumulate and off we go towards heart disease. So not only does HRT not cause heart attacks and strokes and things like that, it's actually protective
Hmm.
against them.
Okay, so that I
So
just want to dive right in because you are a master at sort of busting the myths, and that is one of the myths with HT, in that you only go on it if your symptoms are bad enough to
yeah,
warrant it, and
wrong,
I'm just
wrong.
picturing the poor listener that's like sweating through her sheets every night and like struggling to the doctor's
Right,
office because all her
but her
joints
aunt
ache.
told her,
And right,
her aunt told
exactly.
her it's going to kill you. Don't go on it.
Exactly. I know. So what are some other myths about, HT that we might have that you could bust for us today?
Yeah, so the most important one, if you ask me what's the number one myth, the number one reason women, even when they come in drenched in sweat,
Mhm.
say, I can't do that. I don't want to die. And you say, what are you afraid of dying from? It's
Mhm.
always cancer. Cancer
Mhm.
is the most feared way to die and the most linked to HRT. And
Mhm.
again, this was from a study, and the results came out in 2002, and it turned out the study was done in a flawed way.
Mhm.
We gave HRT to women much older than the women who take it now. Those women, many of them, already had a lot of heart disease
Mhm.
predisposed. Some of them already had cancer, but cancer increases, the risk of breast cancer increases with age. That's the
Mhm.
number one risk. So if you give HRT to a 90-year-old, she's more likely to get cancer than a
Mhm.
50-year-old anyway. So
Yeah.
your results will be skewed. And that's
Mm.
what happened. HRT does not cause cancer, it doesn't cause it. And in
Mhm.
fact, now when we look at women on HRT, we see a reduction in cancer.
So
And in
cool.
the estrogen alone group with no
Mm.
uterus, it's a huge reduction in cancer.
That's so
So you're
cool.
actually safer on it than off it.
Yeah.
Same with heart disease, reduced congestive heart failure, heart attack, stroke.
Mm.
Same with colon cancer, same
Mm.
with ovarian cancer. So a lot of cancers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this has flipped that whole fear on its head. But again, it's very hard to change minds.
Well, you're starting here, and I'm just like, for the people in the back, she just said it does not cause cancer. So that is very important to
Well,
hear.
there is an asterisk, and the asterisk is when we have the estrogen with progesterone.
Mhm.
In some subgroups, we've seen, depending on how long they use it and what type of progesterone, we've seen a slight increased risk in cancer. And
Mhm.
that's concerning. But it turns out that even that doesn't seem to be statistically significant. So
Mm,
remember, there's slight increased risk and there's increase enough that we really shouldn't take this. And
mm-hmm.
that's, we're not seeing that.
Yeah.
So another risk is just about blood clots. Does it cause blood clots? Because
Mm,
people know that the birth control pill that has estrogen has an increased risk in blood clots. So
mm-hmm.
they figure estrogen, estrogen, all the
Right.
same.
Yep.
Not true. They're not all the same. And it has to do with the type of estrogen. So the estrogen in a birth control pill is synthetic,
Mm-hmm.
and the estrogen dose in a birth control pill is not high, but much higher than in postmenopausal HT.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, birth control pills that contain estrogen do increase the risk of blood clots. And the best way to not get a blood clot if you're on the pill is don't smoke. Smoking and the
Okay.
pill,
Wow.
huge increased risk. So,
Yeah.
if you smoke, please stop the pill and have your doctor put you on a pill with no estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
But HT used to be oral.
Mm,
And oral estrogen of any kind has an increased risk of clotting. But we don't use oral estrogen anymore.
mm,
At least in the States, we don't. We use transdermal. It goes through the skin right into the bloodstream. It does not go to the liver, so it does not increase clotability.
mm,
And it has less negative effect on cholesterol and things like that. So HT through the skin is how we give it. The estrogen must go through the skin, a mist, a gel, a patch. In America, I'd say the patch is probably the most
mm-hmm.
commonly used thing. And you just completely eliminate that clot risk
I mean,
that
that
you
is a
see.
big myth that it causes clots. I hear that now that that women can't go on HT
Right. Now
because
remember, oral HT,
right.
if your
But
doctor,
the patch
which
or the
I
mist or
haven't
the cream.
prescribed oral HT in 20 years, but
Yeah.
there's somebody out there that hasn't gone to any lectures in 20
Right.
years and is still writing these. So
Yeah.
if your clinician writes for oral estrogen, you just say thank you and you politely get up and walk out.
You
It
go to a
means
different right.
that person hasn't read anything or even seen TikTok in 20
Yeah.
years. So even the influencers know that, guys. So if your doctor does it, it's time
It's
for a new
time to move
clinician.
on to someone else.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that's that about clots. So I mean, I think the bottom, I mean, we can do more. Another one is weight gain. I mean,
Hmm.
nobody comes into my office and says, I really hope it causes weight gain. I
Right.
mean, right?
Really.
So their big fear is my daughter went on the pill and gained 10 pounds. So I don't want that patch. It's going to make me gain weight.
Yeah.
No, it's actually not. It's
Hmm.
actually not. Remember, the doses are tiny, tiny compared to a birth control pill. And it in some indirect ways, I don't want to say it causes weight loss. I am not going to say
Hmm.
that. No way. But it helps with sleep so
Hmm.
much. And I find when women sleep well, they have more energy during the day. They
Hmm.
tend to be less grouchy, they tend to snack less, they tend to be more active and exercise more, which all leads to better maintenance of weight.
For sure. I
So,
mean, I found for myself, like with perimenopause, before I was on HT, my I felt like any PMS symptom I got was like turned up to volume 20. Like it was just so much. So any of that, like craving or any of the, sleeplessness or anxiety or any of that sort of stuff. Then when I went on HT, it leveled it out again, and I definitely experienced weight loss after being on HT. I just sort of
really,
lost the fluff is how I define it. Like it just sort of
yeah.
felt like I didn't have this like puffiness, bloating, I was
Yes.
sleeping better, all that sort of stuff. So it is,
Hmm.
I like
Yeah.
busting that myth that it causes you to gain weight. um
Right, right. So you don't want to equate it to the pill. And just because you
no.
know someone who gained weight on a birth control pill,
Mm,
it's not the same. I mean, it's like saying Tylenol didn't fix my headache, so I'm sure ibuprofen won't. That's
right.
not
Yeah, yeah,
true,
yeah, totally different. Yeah.
And they're delivered different ways.
Hmm.
Remember, the transdermal is really easier to take with fewer side effects. Um, I think there's one other myth, and that's that really important because 10, 15 years ago, we, like national societies, said, well, just take it for like 5 years and then you better
Mm,
stop, right? And then it was, well, maybe just take it 10 years and then you should
hmm.
stop. Um, the 5 and 10 years is the reason those are not totally false is that the most benefit is in the first
Mm,
5 to 10 years.
okay.
But what we're finding is women who take it longer than 10 years continue to have benefit.
Mm,
Remember what I said about seat belts and
hmm.
sunblock? When you turn 70, you don't just say, well, I've been using sunblock for a lot of years. I'm pretty sure my skin is fine now.
Yeah, I can
No,
stop. Yeah.
as soon as you stop, you're going to get more sun damage. And as soon as you
Mm,
stop wearing a seatbelt, it's not going to protect you anymore. And as soon as you stop HT, your bone density will begin to lose more rapidly.
hmm.
So I think you should think of them as seatbelts and sunblock,
Just you always,
and
yeah,
keep
just
using
part
it.
of maintenance. Well, that feeds into the, back to that first myth that you talked about, that we only go on HT for our symptoms. And it's actually, we go on HT for the preventative part and
That's right.
can help our brain and our bones and our heart. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. What about the myth that all I need is HT? Like all I need is to smack an estrogen patch on and then I will start feeling better.
Yeah.
Like it's the magic
Sadly,
wand. I'd like it
that's
to
not true
be.
either. Obviously I don't work for the HT companies, or I would say, yeah, yeah, that's true,
Yeah, that's right.
but it's not true. Listen, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. And it doesn't work for everyone. I have some people that just have breast tenderness or swelling on it, or they just don't feel right on it. But
Mhm.
I would say probably in my practice, 80 to 90% of the women who take HT feel so much better.
Mhm.
But it doesn't fix everything. Women come in every day and say, I want it to melt away all this body fat. It
Mhm.
doesn't do that. I want it to get rid of all my wrinkles.
Yeah.
It doesn't do that. That's too steep a hill to climb.
Yeah.
Wrinkles, our skin, I
Part of
wish. I
our,
mean,
yeah,
gosh, you and
exactly.
I would have a Nobel Prize if we could find that one.
Figure that out.
But but we have other ways to get rid of belly fat, and we have other ways to minimize wrinkles. And we know that using retinols on the skin helps that. I mean, some people choose to have Botox or fillers or whatever. You do
Yeah.
you. There's
Right.
no judgment here.
But I
I
think thinking of it as like a part of our toolbox as we age, it's just sort of
I like that.
redefining aging, that HT is part, it's along for the ride. And then we have to
Well,
look at the other things we're doing.
I want to tell you something, and the listener something about aging and the human species. So from when we were, cave women or
Mhm.
whatever, till maybe 150 years ago, we didn't live longer than our
Right.
ovaries. We didn't.
Right.
So there
Yeah.
was no such thing as life after menopause. You
Mm,
lived, you had babies, and once you finished having babies, you weren't of that much value to society anyway.
mm.
Sadly, I mean, you and I know
Right.
that's
Yeah.
sad, but women were not. We weren't valued for our minds or anything. We were
Mm,
valued for our reproductive potential. And
mhm,
until 150 years ago, we only lived that long anyway. So there
mhm.
was no need for further discussion. Now women live a third of their life, a
And that's
third of their life
amazing.
after menopause. They
Right.
start in companies, they're running for government office.
Mhm.
They are winning Golden Globes and Oscars.
Yeah.
They're doing spectacular things after
Mhm.
menopause. Um, but society until recently has thought women are still just, shove them away off to the side, put them in black and have them make cookies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the fact
You
that we
just fade
get to
away.
live
Right.
all this and we want to live it well means if we want that, but our bodies haven't figured out how to keep the ovaries alive for the next 30
Mm,
years until they do, we can only keep ourselves healthier by keeping sort of a substitute for the ovaries that aren't living anymore,
mhm,
really. And that's really how I think of this, as that little patch of estrogen is giving me the longevity, but more than longevity, the health span, the
mhm,
health of the next 30 years,
mhm,
and the quality of life so that I can have joy and not get urinary tract infections and osteoporosis
mm.
as much as otherwise would. That's kind of how I think of it, almost
Mhm. I
anthropologically.
really like that. Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
well,
yeah, because so, one of the things that comes up for people is they're like, it's not natural or it's not,
that's
and,
fair.
but like,
Yeah,
it is.
but
And if you're saying that, well, it naturally I mean, naturally, like a lot of people used to die in childbirth and we've done things to get around that. And
that's
naturally,
right.
we used to die at a earlier age. It's natural for our vision to go. Does that mean we never get glasses or
I mean, is cancer natural? Yes or no?
Right.
If
Yeah.
no, then good. Thank God we have chemo. If
Right.
yes, then thank God we have chemo. I mean,
Yes.
either way, I think it's good that we could eliminate pain and suffering and cure
Hmm.
cancer or some cancers.
Yes.
And I feel like osteoporosis and dementia. My
Mm,
father's struggling with dementia right now, and
mm,
this was a man who was so bright and loved reading, and it's stealing the joy from his life.
hmm.
So, do I wish there was something for him? I do.
Yeah.
And I feel like we know there's a wonderful neuroscientist in New York, Lisa Mosconi, who's
Mm.
studying Alzheimer's and dementia and menopause. And do I want her to keep researching and
Oh, yeah.
finding stuff so you and I in 20 years can benefit? I
Hmm.
do.
Yeah.
I do. And if that's not natural because we were supposed to get dementia, I don't care.
Yeah.
I want to
I'm
be able
like,
to be
right.
on your podcast in 20 years and make sense,
Yes. And still, right. Still speak
and still make
coherently. And
sense. Yeah,
yes, I love it.
exactly.
And I really like that idea that it's, natural might be that we die at 56 versus like, I
Yeah,
almost view
and
my
let's
HT as
talk.
a supplement because I don't have
Yeah.
big symptoms anymore. I'm like, this is something that I'm doing that protects
Right.
my heart and my bone and my brains.
And let's talk about that word natural for a minute, because many patients come and they say, "Oh, I don't want that estrogen stuff. I want something natural."
Hmm.
So first of all, the estrogen that you get in a patch or a gel or a mist is estradiol.
Hmm.
Estradiol is the same thing chemically that your ovaries
Mm,
make. So what you're getting is actually chemically identical to what's
mm,
been in your body your whole life.
yeah.
We call it bioidentical. It's
Mhm.
biologically identical. And it used to be to get bioidentical something, you had to have a special pharmacist create it and mix it
Mhm.
up. Now, all the major drug companies, the type of estrogen they make is all bioidentical. So you are getting what's natural, meaning what was in your body.
I really
Uh,
want listeners to hear that. So if you hear of someone that you need like this extra sort of doctor and extra sort of blood test or extra sort of,
functional,
yeah, go to the
integrative,
pharmacy and get it all.
holistic.
Like you actually can get like the patch and the prometrium, which is the progesterone and the
Yeah.
vaginal estrogen. Like it is sold with a prescription, but you can get it for relatively inexpensive. But it's not,
Relatively inexpensively
and that
from a
is
regular boring old
natural.
doctor and
Mm.
from a regular boring old pharmacy.
Yeah.
We use compounding pharmacies for testosterone
Hmm.
because that's not available to us.
Right.
But estradiol,
Hmm.
estradiol, is bioidentical estrogen. And if you look at any of the big pharma companies, their products are all one
Yeah.
ingredient:
Yeah.
estradiol, estradiol, estradiol. So
Hmm.
you are getting natural estrogen. Is it picked from a field and put in the box? No, it's processed and cleaned. They have to pass rigorous testing. But I think the word natural fools a lot of us, and
Hmm.
many people think it has to be from a plant to be natural.
Hmm.
I'm not sure there's nothing wrong with anything from a
Right.
plant. In fact, there's a supplement I love that is plant-based. It comes from a plant, and it's a chemical that is very similar to
Mm.
estrogen. And so it fools the body and helps some of your symptoms. Super
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
So that's natural and plant-based.
Hmm.
But the stuff from pharmaceutical companies is also natural. It may
Yes.
or may not be plant derived.
Yeah.
So be careful how strict you are with the word natural. Sometimes you get so hung up on it that you're actually getting something that's not been studied.
Yes.
Something
See,
like,
that's very important to know too. Yeah.
right, like
Hmm.
many supplements, in America,
Yeah.
54%
Instagram.
of
Yeah.
all adults use supplements. And I'm
Hmm.
not crapping on supplements,
Hmm.
but be careful. Some of those supplements, in fact, a large percentage, don't contain what they say they contain on the
Hmm.
labels because they don't have to.
Hmm.
Nobody's checking.
Right.
So it's very hard to know exactly what you're getting.
Hmm.
Look, if a supplement makes you feel better and it's safe, great,
Hmm.
have at it. And you can check for its safety, and you should check any supplements for safety. Go on the cdc.gov, cdc.gov
Mm.
website, and you can put in the part about you can search supplements and then search your supplement. It's worth it because
Oh,
guess
that is
what?
helpful.
Some of them are liver toxic at
Yeah.
high doses, and
Hmm.
they promote wellness and relaxation,
And
and people are like, you know
natural and
what?
like, yeah,
Natural.
right.
And they're like, one was fine, maybe five is good. And then they
Right.
end up in the emergency room
Hmm.
with pain and liver failure. So, be
Well, and
careful.
also looking at the companies that are selling them to you is something that I had heard. Like, see if it's triple board or triple whatever
Hmm.
verified, that it's not,
Yeah,
probably
it's
not
worth
buying it
it.
on Amazon. That sort of
Yeah.
that,
Well, Amazon
but it's
sells everything.
right.
Amazon sells good and bad, but
Yes.
honestly, I get overwhelmed. I search on
Yes.
Amazon and 100 sub things come up. So
Yeah.
it's very hard.
So you
The
looking, and I
supplement
like to
market's
search my
tricky.
supplement, search, and then I'll look for it, see where I can get that specific one. It helps me cut down on the overwhelm sometimes.
That's
But
good.
your
That's
point
good.
there of whether, if we're getting something that someone maybe on Instagram or, a more doctor that is not, or whatever, a
Yeah.
wellness coach. And I'm saying that I used to do it, I have a
And
certification
and
as a
wellness
wellness coach.
coaches are great. I'm
Right,
not saying
exactly.
they're
I'm
not. Yeah.
not. I am a
But just
wellness
be
coach, but
careful about
right. If
natural
I'm like, try
because
this one,
it's
we don't know what's in it, and it is
yes.
could be more
And
harmful
and
than the
mostly
actual
they're fine.
natural
They're
thing.
mostly fine.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But and I'm a big believer in complementary and alternative medicine. I
Mm-hmm.
believe in aromatherapy and
Mm-hmm.
acupuncture and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But with supplements, you want to be careful that you're not falling prey to stuff online that's promising the fountain of youth that
Yeah.
isn't delivering that.
Which is
So,
again why I like just how you're on here busting the myths of hormone therapy, because I see it as one thing in my toolbox, and it just helps me like get to a certain baseline level. And then I might use some oils to help, essential oils to help me sleep, or some
yeah,
supplements to,
me too.
but the busting through some of these myths with HT are so helpful. And I'm so grateful for your time, because this will be very valuable to people. Is there anything that you think we've missed out in terms of
Um,
myths, or what you wish midlife women knew about
I think maybe
their health?
testosterone, maybe
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
so we covered estrogen and then progesterone. Everybody does not have to take it. If you don't
Mhm,
have a uterus, you don't need it. If you have a uterus, you take it. You can take it by mouth at
mhm,
bedtime. It helps with sleep. It
mhm,
releases something called GABA in the brain and it
mhm,
lets you sleep. You can also, if you don't want to take the oral or you have side effects from that, you can actually get an IUD put
mhm,
in, not for contraception, but that
mhm,
releases progesterone, and that's another way to take it. Testosterone, many of my patients say, I don't understand. Why do I need testosterone? I'm a woman. That's a
mhm,
male hormone. It's linked to masculinity and men,
mhm,
but we actually make testosterone just like men make estrogen.
mhm,
And we need testosterone. And when we lose it, this is one potential
mhm,
reason for a drop in libido. It also probably is why we get a transfer of fat onto the belly.
mhm,
When we lose estrogen, we lose more estrogen than we do testosterone. So, relatively, after menopause, the brain and body sees a little more testosterone than estrogen. That's why some women lose hair
mhm,
around their forehead or get chin hair or get belly fat or even cystic acne. These are all
mhm,
testosterone related things.
mhm,
Um, and yet we need it. And sometimes I give my patients compounded testosterone to
mhm,
help them with libido. We even can apply it topically to the clitoris to help with
mhm.
orgasm daily, like not at the
Yeah.
time of sex, but to help promote new blood vessels and blood flow there. So
Okay.
it has needs, and I think it's a myth to think that we don't benefit from it.
Well, and to think that it's only a male hormone, because I just want, again,
Yes,
to highlight
yes.
that you say women make testosterone, or women have and make testosterone, men have and make estrogen, which is like, what?
Mhm. What?
Hold
Yeah.
on. I think I read somewhere that my husband, who's 61, has probably, if I wasn't using HT, probably has more estrogen in him than I do now. Like
Oh my
that.
God.
That's sort of like, but again, those are good myths to have. Well, I really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your expertise. And
No
I
worries.
just invite listeners, I will put links to where to find you on here, and then to just ask us your follow-ups, because we're already excited about a follow-up episode talking about sort of busting some sexual myths, and
Yeah.
another whole area of expertise of Dr. Sophocles. And so is there anything last you'd like to say before we wrap up tonight?
No, just thank you so much for having me. And I'd be really excited to come back and do sex frequently asked questions or sexual myths. And hopefully the listeners would even send you some questions
Yeah, send them.
ahead of
Where's,
time,
yeah,
and that'll structure it and we'll have fun doing it that way. I think
yeah.
that would be really fun. Because libido and self-worth and living your best life, part of that is sexual health. I mean, sexual
Feeling
health is human
broken,
health.
the bedroom gap. Yeah, I will put a link to
Yeah.
your TED Talk in these show notes, but then I think coming back and talking about it. So any questions that are coming up for listeners, email to me,
All right.
and then also go follow Dr. Sophocles and give her some love, 'cause this is
Oh,
very
thank you
valuable for us
guys. I
all.
love
Thank
it,
you.
Susie. It was so much fun. It was lovely to meet you. Thank
So
you.
fun. Thank you.